Hi, everybody. Welcome to ZTV Live. Today's Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. I hope everybody is doing okay out there, having a good evening and a good week so far, and getting ready for the snow that it looks like we're going to be getting tomorrow night. And if anybody could just go ahead and give us a wave, hello, and let us know that you can see us and hear us. We always like to know our audience is out there, and we're so thankful to have the audience. And tonight is one of our great hosts. Ralph Peluso is here with Reading, Writing, and Ralph. Hi, Ralph. Welcome back to ZTV Live.
Hi, Susan. How are you today?
I'm excellent. I'm keeping warm so far. How about you?
Trying to keep warm. We have that nor'easter coming in. I'm hoping that we just get rain and no snow here on the Delmarva.
Yeah.
But can you believe this is the last show of the year already?
No, I can't believe that. Actually, it seems to have flown by. It just seems like yesterday we were just, you're starting with your trivia questions.
I know. It seems like we were just starting, and now here been doing this for 9 months, and it's still so exciting and so fresh, and meet such great people and the authors with their stories. It's just very fascinating and rewarding, and I'm just hoping people enjoy it because I sure am.
Yeah, I think that people are enjoying it, Ralph, and you have such a great show. Your guests are fantastic. The trivia questions have turned out to be really a big hit, and so it's wonderful to get the audience involved like that. I know
Good.
I really appreciate it. I think they do too.
Thanks. And fittingly enough, tonight's guest was our very first guest.
Oh, let's bring him right up on the screen.
John Wasowicz. Hey, John, how are you?
Hey, Ralph, I'm doing great. I didn't know I was the first guest, so I'm delighted to be back.
So you started the year and you're closing the year. It's fitting.
Sounds good to me. It's been a heck of a year, too.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna let you guys take it from here.
Susan, nice to see you.
Thanks for joining us again. And quickly tell the viewers, because we've got lots of new viewers since we first started this thing, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into your works.
Sure. Well, I'm an attorney, and when I turned 65, I wrote my first book in 2017. It was called Dangerfield Island, and I created a character named Mo Katz, who in book one is a defense attorney, former prosecutor in the city of Alexandria, not a character unlike myself. I was a former prosecutor, and then I was in defense practice for several years. The book was a success. I had a small publishing house in Baltimore, Brickhouse Books. And in 2019, we came back with the second Mo Katz book, Jones Point. And this year, Slaters Lane was published in the fall, and it is a criminal investigation that takes place in April 2020 as the pandemic is heating up.
Yes, I have to. I think I've mentioned this to you that in reading all three of your books, I thought that Slaters Lane was your best work of the three. It's very fast paced. It's got some interesting plot lines and twists. It's a super read.
So I appreciate that, and fans who have read all three books, Ralph, say the same thing. They say that Slaters Lane worked the best for them. It was the easiest book of the three to write, and I tell people that at the end of Dangerfield Island, I felt as though the keys were just typing themselves on the keyboard, and I was just watching them because it flowed, and I knew the book had ended. In Slaters Lane, the entire book was almost a stream of consciousness, where I was able to catch a moment in time while we were all sequestered in our homes and transform it into a murder mystery, really in 3 acts, and each act taking a duration of approximately 4 days, during a period of time that was almost timelessness for us. I mean, people lost track, I think, of the day of the week, the time of the day, because our routines had changed so much. So I tried to use the coronavirus as a backdrop and how one would conduct a police investigation during the pandemic.
Yeah, and it works. And before we start to talk about some of the specific themes of the books and the plot lines and all of that, I want to remind our guests tonight we have 3 trivia questions. They're all Alexandria, excuse me, based, and the winners will get an autographed copy of Slaters Lane. So thanks to John. So the first
happy to do it.
The first trivia question of the night is: of the following 4 people, which one was not born in Alexandria? Stuart Copeland, who's the drummer for the Police, and here's a great picture of him as a youngster. Mackenzie Phillips, who was a star of One Day at a Time. Jim Morrison, everyone knows Jim Morrison as the lead singer and songwriter for The Doors. And Dermot Mulroney, who was last seen acting in Shameless on Showtime or HBO, I forget. So which one was not born in Alexandria? So John, the plot opens up with a murder. And there's some twist to that murder line as it goes along. So why don't you talk about the initial plot, how you came up with the concept, and how you came up with some of the twists and the turns in the novel itself.
All right. So all 3 of the books open with a murder. Dangerfield Island, there's a body in the Potomac River. In Jones Point, there's a body down, obviously, at Jones Point. And then in Slaters Lane, the book opens with a brutal attack on a federal prosecutor who answers her door on April 12th, which was Easter Sunday. And on that day, my wife and I were taking a walk through our neighborhood. The neighborhood was deserted. People were indoors. Christians had not gone to church on Easter Sunday. They were not celebrating it. There was no pageantry, no bonnets, no welcoming to spring. Everything was very quiet and still. And I mentioned to my wife, what would happen if a crime was committed on a day like today? How would the police investigate it? We're in the throes of a pandemic. How do you collect evidence? How do you interview witnesses? How do you do so many things that are part of a police investigation? I went home after our walk through our neighborhood in Wessington, and I began to write. That afternoon, it was Easter Sunday. And I already had the idea of a book in my head. So I spent 2 weeks overlaying facts related to the pandemic in the time period of April 12th to April 24th, basically. And then I poured in, almost as though setting the foundation of a home, my ideas for the new book. And then I simply built and structured on top of that. I created a facade, an edifice of 3 pieces, like three acts to a play. And then I composed each separate one, sort of an Agatha Christie type display of having a classic whodunit, where there is a murder, there's an investigation, and then you have a series of possible suspects, and the entire investigation unfolds online. The interviews occur online, the evidence is transmitted electronically, folders and files, telecommunications, video conferences, everything in a online presentation, so it almost conveys like a play in the final analysis.
Yeah, it's when you use the COVID-19 backdrop, a lot of things are well thought out on your side that most people wouldn't think about. It's how the COVID-19 and all the protocols and all the restrictions impact murder investigations, because it's hard to get to a site, and a lot more is done digitally. And it was just fascinating the way that evolved. And you can even speak to more of the problems, restricting who can go in and things like that.
Yeah. So
And
so in Slaters
the
Lane, go ahead, Ralph.
yeah, the thing that builds in Slater's Lane because of that is the tensions between the characters are a little bit more pronounced. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So that was deliberate on my part. I created in book two. I introduced a new character, Sherry Stone. She's an Alexandria detective, and she's a tough cop. She's a good cop, and she and Mo Katz, my fictional hero, are play a game of yin and yang. They're both trying to get to the same place, and they're both similar characters. They both are willing to almost break the law in order to solve a crime, but they won't because they're straight shooters. But they have in themselves the same basic composite of DNA. And so it creates a tension. They become rivals, and they withhold information from each other. They try to conduct their independent investigations, and by doing that, they are actually complementing one another. And they reach a point in the story where where they unite forces and they share their information, and they do it at a critical moment when the culprit is quote unquote confessing to the crime, but he's actually doing so for an ulterior motive.
Mhm.
And I have the tension between the two of them, and then I have the tension between everybody who is involved in the investigation, because they aren't getting together. They aren't meeting in rooms to be able to do things. They're meeting online. And because of that, each of them is living their own separate, independent life. And it's creating a separation between what they're trying to do collectively and how they are conducting their lives individually. And I tried to mirror what was happening in my own life and then in
Mhm.
the lives of people around me, where suddenly the office was home. And so how did all of that mix together, and how did we maintain work relationships and home relationships and personal relationships, and do so in a way that was constructive and collaborative in meeting whatever objectives we were trying to meet?
Yeah, I think it does a great job doing that because it certainly is reflective of what's happening, in our communities, in our states, and around the world. The further you get from human interaction, regardless of whatever the topic is, the more the tension builds, right? Or whatever the issue is, it gets blown out of proportion because you can't diffuse it quickly enough.
Yeah, we're living through a moment. We're living through an incredible moment in history. 300,000 Americans are dead. We have a vaccine that is now out there that is being introduced. And it's being introduced in a way that no vaccine has ever been introduced before. Everything from the review by the FDA to the actual shipment by UPS and FedEx, the way they've split up the country, the pharmacies that are dealing with it, the pharmaceuticals that are dealing with it. 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, they will be writing about 2020 and how we dealt with a pandemic of historic proportion. I read in the early part of the year, Ralph, that one should keep a chronicle of this year, because even though we're living through it day to day, what's occurring to us and how it will affect us short term and long term is going to be massive. Part of Slater's Lane was undertaken for me to do that chronicle, for me to keep that journal. And rather than just maintain a diary, I decided to wrap it around an Agatha Christie type mystery. So I've taken sort of like Daniel Defoe's history of the Black Death, and I've wrapped that chronology around a mystery, so you can read it, and in reading it you find yourself, but you also
Right,
find a historical accounting for how we were dealing with COVID-19 during the first spike of the pandemic, when
right.
50,000 people had died, when it seemed like, oh my God, how much more can happen? Well, we're learning how much more can happen. And we're learning how it will affect us, our children, our parents, our professional life, and our personal life.
Yeah, those are good points. Let's check with Susan and see if we have a winner yet.
We do have a winner, and 3 guesses who's the first one with the correct answer. It's Michelle D'Amato. Congratulations, Michelle. The correct answer was Jim Morrison. Kelly McConomy had guessed Stuart Copeland, which was the one that I was actually surprised that he was born in Alexandria, but then she realized it was who was not born in Alexandria, and it was Jim Morrison. So great question. And congratulations, Michelle.
Well, we'll give the second question. We'll do the second question now. And again, if a previous winner gets in before another winner, then we give the prize to the second, but we mentioned the first winner again. So we're going to start calling that the Michelle rule. The second question is, during its peak period, or the peak period of the war, how many torpedoes were made at the torpedo factory in Alexandria? So during its peak year, how many torpedoes were made at Alexandria's torpedo factory? So back to John. John, so let's talk a bit about the transition of the characters from the first novel to the third novel. So
It's huge.
Yeah, I know.
So I'll start with Mo Katz. In the first 2 books, in both Dangerfield Island and in Jones Point, there isn't a tremendous amount of what makes Mo tick, what's inside of him. There is a bit of a clue in the first book when he's driving down the Taconic Parkway from Massachusetts, where he's been to a funeral for the former U.S. attorney. He's returning home, where he thinks about visiting his parents, but he doesn't. In book 3, we realize how estranged he's become from his parents, and they've been estranged from each other for over a decade. After the initial assault against one of his deputy prosecutors, he drives up to Johns Hopkins Hospital, where she has been medevaced. And he's driving along 295 and then onto the BW Parkway through a storm. There's actually a storm that night. I follow the weather patterns, the moon, everything is real in that 14-day period in April when the book takes place. He's driving through the rain and he calls his father. And he hasn't spoken to his father in years. And he learns that his mom is at Mount Sinai Hospital and she has the coronavirus. Right. And it's a cathartic moment for Katz, and it's a moment, he has a bit of an epiphany as to the importance of the role his parents have played in his life. And as the story goes on, I draw the reader into understanding that the difficulty that Mo experiences in his upbringing, and he is raised in an interracial family. His father is Jewish, his mother is Black. That the life that he grew up in enabled him to empathize with people in a way that others cannot. And it is his empathy that enables him to form relationships with victims, with witnesses, with his own staff. And so something that he thought might have been a shortcoming in his life is exactly the opposite. It's the key that enables him to be the very rich and colorful person that he is. And similarly, I also had further developments in the lives of other people. I'll just say Mai Lin as an example. In book 2, she and her husband, David Reese, have a child. In book 3, we learn how they are forming that family and how the formation of that family is affecting both of them in the sensitivities and the sensibilities they bring to their investigative work. Mai is working with Mo Katz, sort of going up one avenue. David is working with Detective Stone. They are going up a very different avenue to try to solve the same crime.
Yeah, I two perceptions that I had in each of those relationships. With Mo Katz, it took a lot for him to pick up the phone and call his father.
That's true. Mo's a very private guy. He's a guy who doesn't show his emotion. He's a guy who tries to put profession before personality. And he's a guy who actually avoids exploring his own inner self. What happens in Slaters Lane, and I think what's happened to all of us, is we've recognized the importance of relationships, maybe in ways that we didn't appreciate, or if we appreciated them, we didn't act upon in the past. Parents' relationships with children, children with grandparents. There's been something that's happened in this horrible pandemic that we're living through that has actually been beautiful. And what it has to deal with is relationships and the value and premium one places on relationships. And Slaters Lane tries to bring that out, that there is always a dark side, but there's always a light side to everything that happens. You just talked about the number of torpedoes that were made at the torpedo factory during World War II. What a horrible, horrible war. 20 million people died in Russia alone, I think. I mean, it was huge, the effect of that war across Europe and in the United States. And yet, from that war, there were so many scientific, societal, and other structural changes that were brought about that never could have occurred. I think we'll find in the years ahead that the pandemic is similar, that it will have a side to it. Once a vaccine comes into play, once the deaths began to decline, once we get this thing under control, that it really has changed our life. It has changed our life educationally, in terms of our work, in terms of our commutes, in terms of even what you and I are doing, the online communications, and the audience, the fact that the audience comes online in order to interact with you. And the use of interactive questions and answers. Go back a year ago. We would not have been doing something like this. And if we were doing it, people might not be responding as positively as they are. As I said, we're living through a phenomenal moment in time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the more people use technology to interact like this, the more comfortable they get, and then the more willing they are to do it. And that's a great point you make about that. The second perception I have is with Mei Lin. She clearly steps out in book 3 as the head of that family. Whereas in book 1, they were equal. And now she is clearly the alpha dog.
Yeah. So first of all, these two characters, Mai Lin and David Reese, they appear as a couple in book 1, and they help Mo Katz solve a mystery. It's actually David who finds the body at Dangerfield Island, and he finds this photograph. It's in a locket around the victim's neck. It's the key to book 1. And Mai Lin and David Reese attach themselves to Mo Katz. When he becomes U.S. attorney, he brings them with him. And in book 2, they have a baby. Now, I just have to step aside here for a moment. In book 1, I actually killed David Reese. And my editor, Charles Ramelkamp, called me. And he said, "John, you can't kill this guy. I like him." So I had to rewrite the scene. And Ralph, it was an epiphany for me, because it showed me that people cared about the characters. I never appreciated it until Charles called me and told me how he was reacting to David Reese. Anyway, book 2, David and Mai marry. They have a baby. And there's a scene where Shamlis loses the baby in a shooting that takes place in the run-up to the climactic moment on the Wilson Bridge. But in book 2, she takes real affirmative action in stepping out, in conducting the investigation. She goes into the heart of danger unilaterally to investigate something going on in Crystal City. So you already see her as somebody who is willing to take risks in order to accomplish a goal. In book 3, I amplify it, where she is the one who is curious. She is the one who is dogged. She is the one who is determined. She is the one who drives Mo in the entire part of that investigation. And she does it through her inquisitiveness. She doesn't give up. She's always trying to figure out why certain pieces aren't aligning correctly. And by doing so, she has Curtis Santana, who's an investigator. She has Mo Katz. She even has David reevaluating their own hypotheses of what's going on. So you're right. She steps out, and I think she will continue to do so as this series progresses, because David's in law school now. He's going to become an attorney. I foresee him being a prosecutor down the road. She's going to take a more active role in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so I agree with you.
That's good. So let's check in with Susan and see if we have a winner for the second trivia question.
No, we don't have a winner. We've had a couple of guesses. No, we don't have a winner yet. Not close.
Wow.
The guess was 9,918.
That's fairly wrong.
I am encouraging our viewers to keep guessing, so hopefully they will.
Maybe a multiple choice.
Okay, let's give it 3 more minutes, and then the closest answer will have won.
Okay.
All right, let's give it 3 minutes. So getting back to the themes and the relationships, the one that really got me was the one that's centered to the plot, the mother and daughter, Hutton and Barton. And as a mother-daughter combination where they're almost a mirror image of one another, how did you come up with that? Because that is very twisted.
Yeah. So first, Hutton is introduced in book 2, and she is an adversary of Mo Katz in Jones Point, and they work on opposite sides of the system in order to forge a settlement in a case with Pasha Industries. But underneath that adversarial role they have toward each other, Hutton is really dedicated to doing the right thing and acting in the interest of truth, justice, and the American way. Katz recognizes that, and the mystery of why she did what she did in book 2 is revealed in book 3. So it creates a caring relationship by Katz toward Hutton. As far as the mother-daughter relationship goes, Ralph, I don't know. I think I was reading in the New York Post or in one of the newspapers that I subscribe to daily about shows and programs that are on where mothers and daughters dress alike or adopt a similar approach to that they like the same kind of things. They do the same sort of things together, and I used that theme in order to connect mother and daughter. But as you know, having read the book, there are ulterior motives to the two of them looking alike and being alike and acting alike, and what attracts or repels people because of that. So it had a literary aspect to it.
Even to the point where the houses were identical. That actually floored me when I read the book. Let me check back with Susan, see if we have a winner, and then we'll.
We don't have a winner, but we do have a question because the Google answer is 9,918.
The Google
Whoa.
answer is incorrect.
Yeah, the Google answer is incorrect. What?
Ralph
Google
has
is
the right
incorrect.
answer. Forget
right answer.
Google.
I have it right from the Torpedo Factory.
There you go. So do you want to keep waiting? You want to give it another minute or two?
So who's closest to the correct answer?
Well,
99.
9918, and the first one to say that was Michelle, and then right on Michelle's heel, Kelly McConomy said 9918, and then Mary just confirmed that that's what Google is saying. So maybe Ralph, you want to give them what the answer is?
Yeah, the answer is Google is wrong by 9,918. The Torpedo Factory never manufactured a single torpedo. So Kelly McConaughey, by virtue of being the second one in, wins the trivia question.
She does. She wins a book. Congratulations, Kelly. Thank you.
And you can go to the Torpedo Factory website and look up the history.
Great question, Ralph.
Let's do the third question, and then we'll continue with our discussion. Third question is, of the following 4 detective novels, list them in the order of the least number to the most number of books, full novels. Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe, Alexander Cross, or Alex Cross, and Hercule Poirot. Least number to the most number of works. So let's get back to talking about the relationships and the themes. So we've talked about Lynn and Reese. We've talked about Hutton. The one that we didn't talk about, which comes from an intrigue perspective, is, as it turns out, there was betrayal from within Mo's own team here that is at the center of this. So that's, again, kind of a twist and a change from where things started. We have this cohesive team built by a guy who sort of stumbles along, he pulls together in book 2, but now we get the added influence of betrayal. So talk to that.
Yeah, so I think what's happening as I'm writing more books, and I started out with what I thought was a one and done. I thought Dangerfield Island would be a single book. It'd be something I'd mark off as having accomplished in my life. But the success of the book and the unwillingness of the characters to go away, to leave me, like they, sometimes I wonder if I'm the creator of these characters or if I'm simply their scribe and they're living their own separate lives. Because anybody who's listening and who writes knows that these characters almost begin to take on a independent sort of life of their own. The more I've written, Ralph, the more complex the stories have become. In some respects, the darker they've become. In other respects, the more hopeful they've become. And so when we talk about betrayal, think of the 4 authors you mentioned a moment ago. Take Philip Marlowe, for instance, and the theme of betrayal in his novels and in so many of his short stories. It's a theme that is in noir everywhere you look. And it had not existed in the other 2 books. There was more of a collaborative effort all the way around. Yet here, there is this underpinning of betrayal. And not to give away the story of the book, but if you go back in history, the way these parties were brought together and the way Mo created the nucleus of his office, that it sort of sets things off. And it's something that I've never experienced in my own personal or professional life. I've been blessed with relationships that have always functioned and worked and supported. But it's something I find in literature and something that I thought just thematically worked really, really well. Because when you write a book like this, you have to throw the reader off. You have to direct the reader every place except where the dagger is going to land.
Right.
And in order to do that, you have to make certain people appear better than they are, and certain people appear worse than they are. And so, when you say it's the book that of the three has worked the best for you, part of that is because you didn't expect what happens, that it caught you by surprise. And
Right.
if that works, then I've succeeded.
Yeah. It's very well done. There's so much going on in that book. It's really a great read, whether you read it as the last in the trilogy or read it by yourself. It's a terrific read. And it's got plenty of twists and turns, and I said betrayal is the last one, and betrayal is a tough one. And you're right. It is. When you think about all the great detective writers, they all have an ounce of betrayal in some of the things they do. Even look at Shakespeare.
It's everywhere in Shakespeare.
He's filled with culprits everywhere. But it's been fun. And let's check to see if we have a winner on the last question yet.
No, we don't have a winner. I was just typing it in. We had a request to repeat the question.
Okay, so the question is, there are 4 terrific detective novels written by the likes of Raymond Chandler and Agatha Christie and James Patterson. So the detectives are Sam Spade, who's Philip Marlowe, Alex Cross, Hercule Poirot, and list those in the order of the least number of novels to the most number. So again, Poirot, Cross, Marlowe, and Spade. Our next guest, and I'm going to segue into the next guest, which is next year. Talk about betrayal. It's Adriana Sifakis wrote a tremendous book about betrayal, family betrayal of all things, called SWAC, Sealed with a Kiss. And she will be our guest in January. So after the Christmas holidays, we get into a deep discussion about family betrayal, which is probably the worst of all kind of betrayals. But what's next? In this time of COVID, all of us are probably watching way too much television than we want to, either Netflix or Amazon or whatever. And what's caught the interest of a lot of folks are these detective series that are written in Great Britain, Germany, Spain. Have you thought about expanding into the international marketplace, international arena, not marketplace, and things like that? Where could you take Mo Katz international, have him solve crimes in Norway?
No, he's always got. First of all, there's a lot of great stuff on Netflix and Hulu and everywhere else. Yeah. Engrenage, which is French for spiral, is a series that we've watched and we love it. A lot of great Norwegian noir. We just finished a series, Prime Suspect, which is a classic in Great Britain. But Mo Katz is always going to be on the streets of Alexandria. That's where he is. It's a rich community. Many fictional characters. I mean, think of Sherlock Holmes, right? The streets of London. They have a habitat. And so for Mo, it's going to be Alexandria. Eventually, he'll no longer be the U.S. attorney. He's going to go back to private practice. There may be opportunities for him in the federal government, in the executive branch, and we'll see how all of that evolves. But he will stay where he is. The 4th book, Roach's Run, is being edited right now. I've already finished it. Roach's Run is located across from Gravelly Point around National Airport. Mm-hmm. And there's a murder there. so, so that would be book 4, and I just have begun sketching out book 5 as well. So
Wow.
I have a lot
So
of
more's
thoughts,
going to
Ralph.
continue. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's a lot of fun. I want to take a moment though before we end the program to thank you, and to the readers who are listening. I mentioned Ralph, and I mentioned Mary Waldron, the publisher of Zebra Press, in the acknowledgments of Slaters Lane. You guys do so much for the city of Alexandria. You promote its writers, you promote its artists, you promote the community. You are a multifaceted media operation, and it's wonderful what you do for everyone. So in this holiday season, I want to thank you, Ralph. I want to thank the entire team. I want to thank Susan, everybody who's responsible for putting this program on this evening, but also all the great folks who do the Zebra Press every day, every week, every month. I thank you. And I also wanted to mention to anyone who's interested in buying a copy of any one of my 3 books, I'm going to put a plug in for Hooray for Books on King Street, which is run by Ellen Klein. She's run that bookstore for over 12 years through good times and bad times. This is not a good time to be a small business owner in anywhere in the United States of America. People are shopping online. People are avoiding retail. So if you're interested in getting a copy of my book, look up the number for Hooray for Books, call Ellen, put in an order, give us your name. I'd love to sign a book and inscribe it to you personally. And I would love to have the purchase made through Ellen's book so that I can share with Ellen the profit that is derived from a book. And I also want to just put a quick plug in for all of the book clubs that have welcomed me to meet with them in person, in correctly socially distanced places or online. I've met some great people in Alexandria who run some wonderful programs, and I'm appreciative to them for their support and their ideas. They become the readers of my books. They give me editing ideas. They give me story ideas, and they have become a valuable part of MoCats and everything that we're doing. So thank you, Ralph.
You're welcome. And Mary Wadlin's a longtime friend now, and she's done a great job with the Zebra, and her ingenuity has just been fabulous in getting ZTV launched. That not only for authors, but for musicians and the other ZT Live shows that we have. Just fabulous. And again, it's an outgrowth of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I've made some wonderful friends being associated with the Zebra now going on 7 years. It's quite a while, and I appreciate every day. And as I said, the authors are all wonderful, great stories. If you keep your eyes and your ears open, you'll find a new chapter every day you walk out your door. You just have to look for it. And it's just a lot of fun. And we appreciate having folks like yourself on that are part of the community, and it makes it great. And with the holidays coming up, I want to thank all the viewers for the support they've shown, not only for this show, but for all the Zebra shows. And the effort that goes into it behind the scenes with guys like David McClure and Susan, the work she puts in behind the scenes, just to make this all happen. I don't know how to do these graphics, but they all put them together so it works, and it's just wonderful. Susan, do we have a winner yet?
No, we got into a little bit of a love fest, John. Thank you so much for your kind words. Much appreciated by Mary, by Kelly McConomy, Ralph, and myself, everybody who works at the Zebra. We do love what we do, and that's what makes it possible to do it. It is a labor of love for sure, but everybody got so caught up in the love that nobody answered the question. No, even though you kind of gave the answer as you read the question.
I know.
But Yeah. And I wanted to kind of say that, but maybe you want to just
Do we have anybody submitted a guess?
no, nobody. Let's see. Nobody guessed. Everybody got into what John was talking about.
Oh.
No, but actually, Kelly McConomy was wondering if was your mom's name Linda?
No.
Oh, okay. Because she thinks that her husband used to live on Slaters Lane, or her husband used to live on Slaters Lane, and she was wondering if there was a connection there. But anyway, that would have been a really small world story. But no,
I've never lived on Slaters Lane, Susan, but Nicole Lacroix, who is a online broadcaster at WETA Classical in Washington, she narrates the audiobook version of Slaters Lane, and she lived right off of Slaters Lane when she resided in Alexandria. So when I reached out to her and asked her if she would be interested in narrating the book, one of the reasons she accepted my offer was because of her familiarity with the area.
I was going to say, it must have been so fun for her to read that, to record that, because she knows it so well, because she grew up there. Anyway, Kelly McConomy guessed in the order that Ralph read. And you're right, Kelly. Yeah. So, yeah, yep. So anyway, well, thank you again, John, for your very kind words. Ralph, Merry Christmas to you. Enjoy your holiday.
To our viewers, I hope each and every one of you have a wonderful Christmas and New Year holiday season, and get to see your families when you can, even if it's on a limited time basis. And even if it has to be under awkward circumstances, in person or on Zoom or on Skype, whatever. The support has been great and wonderful, and as long as we continue to be the good news in somebody's life, we'll continue to do it. And our next show is, I think, let me check the date. It will be Adriana Sifakis, and the book is SWAC. Again, a great read, a very intricate plot, and a very heartwarming story, as intense as it is.
Yep. I believe that your next show is Tuesday, January 12th.
12th, yeah. That's right.
That's it. Tuesday, January 12th. So, well, terrific. Well, thank you again, both of you, for another wonderful show. And John, we'll look forward to book 4 and then book 5 after that. So we all love to read about things that are happening in our own backyard. So thank you so much.
I have one more MoCat's plot. There should be something between the New York Yankees and the Red Sox.
And the Red Sox will win.
They might.
That's what I'll do. I'll put in a baseball game, and I'll have the Red Sox winning in the bottom of the 9th. That's great.
And then 86 years later, they'll win again.
I'll even have a comeback like in the classic American League Championship Series of, I think, 2004, where your beloved Yankees were up 3-1 against the Red Sox. They won Game 3, Susan, something like 18-7. They were up in the series 3-0, and the Red Sox came back 4 consecutive games. The final 2, I got to keep going, Ralph. The final 2 at Yankee Stadium, beating Mariano Rivera, who was leading in the bottom of the 9th in one of those games, and they came back and they clinched, and then they swept the Cardinals to win the World Series that year. Go Red Sox!
You're exactly right. And in Game 4, the game that the Red Sox came back from a monumental deficit, A-Rod had a chance to ice the game at one point and did what he usually did, failed.
Well, that was worth it just to get to that point. So,
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, you guys have a wonderful evening, and Ralph, we'll see you next year, and you too,
Bye.
John.
See you next year.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, take care. Okay, that is going to do it for Oops, that is the wrong camera. Smile, Ralph, you're still on, but now you are. Okay, there we go. That's going to do it for tonight's episode of ZTV Live. Thank you, as your wonderful audience, for viewing in, for joining the conversation and giving us your guesses. We love having you watch the show. I hope everybody has a good night. Please tune in here again tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. It's Wellness Wednesday. Dr. Lauren Fisher will be welcoming Dr. Eleni Bousalis, who has a podcast that she'll be discussing, and it's going to be a lot of kind of help and guidance on how to get through the holidays, because it's going to be a different kind of holiday season this year. So please tune in with us tomorrow night. And then Thursday night, the Virginia Amos Show. Virginia is welcoming Megan Ferran from Alexandria and Company, a boutique jeweler here in Old Town. So anyway, we'll hope we see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And until then, please remember to be the good news in someone's life.